Well, good morning again, and welcome to Red Rock Church. I especially want to extend a very special welcome to anybody that's here today that is here for the very first time. If you have never been to Red Rock Church before, we are so grateful that you chose to be with us this morning. And especially if you haven't been in church for a long time or you've never been to church before, I recognize it takes a lot of courage to get up on a Sunday morning if you don't typically go to church on a regular basis and go and check out or investigate a church that maybe you've never been to before or you haven't been to in a long time. So I just want to say thank you so much for being with us this morning. Also want to welcome those of you that are watching online. And for those of you that have been with us for the entire series, we have seen some really amazing things happen throughout this series, Because I Love You. We're talking all about how we can love our neighborhoods, our city, and even our world. We're going to talk a little bit about that today. But I just want to mention, if you're here for the first time, or maybe you've been coming for a long time, but you just missed the first couple of weeks of this series, I want to encourage you to do something, to go to redrockchurch.org and watch the first two parts of this series. Because so much of what we're going to talk about today is really buried in those two messages. And so if you haven't had a chance to see those, it's really important for you to do that because it'll explain a lot of what we've been talking about over the last couple of weeks. Especially if you're here this morning and you're not typically going to church or you're just not sure about the whole Christianity thing, I am really grateful that you're here this morning because I think that what we're going to talk about this morning, the topic that we're going to tackle this morning, is relevant for you whether you believe the Bible in its entirety or not. Even if you're not sure whether the Bible is true or not, what we're going to talk about today, I think will be very, very helpful for you in your life. And that's one of the things that we hope for here at Red Rock Church is we kind of talk about this throughout the week that here at Red Rock, we want people to belong even if they don't believe everything. And so if you're here this morning, you're still kind of checking Christianity out and you're not sure that the Bible is completely true, we think that this morning is going to be helpful for you no matter what. And so as we've been doing throughout this series, we've been asking a bunch of questions throughout the series to kind of help guide us and make sure we land in the right spot. We talked about a principle during week 1 that talks about asking the right questions. Here's what the principle says. Before you start looking for answers, make sure you're asking the right questions. And so we've had some fun with this. If you're, again, here for the first time, you missed out on the last couple of weeks, we've been having some fun with asking questions. And I started off in week 1, I asked you a very simple question. I said, hey, what's the number one place you would go to if you had friends or family members coming into Colorado Springs? What's the number one place you would take them to? And you guys responded with a bunch of responses. Pikes Peak came up, Garden of the Gods came up, a bunch of other places. Then last week I asked the question, hey, what's the number one place you like to go and eat in Colorado Springs? And I got a ton of people responding. And in fact, throughout the week, I got a bunch of people messaging me, emails, social media, all sorts of stuff. People Facebooking me and saying, hey, Jason, we're going out to eat tonight, and I'd really like to know, what were your top 5 places again? And so I shared with them my top 5 places. I think they wound up at Bingo Burger or something like that. So anyway, we've had some fun with this question, and so I want to ask you this question one more time, but it's slightly different to set the stage for what we're going to talk about today. Here's the question. What's the number one place in the world you would like to visit? Now, I'm going to make an assumption. Everybody, obviously, Australia is one of those places everybody wants to visit. So maybe think of your second place that you want to visit because you're going to yell that out. I know that. And so on the count of 3, here's what I want to invite you to do. And again, for those people who've been going to church for a long period of time, this is scary, I know. Yelling in church, it's a scary concept, but you're allowed to do it this morning, okay? So on the count of 3, I want you to yell out for me the number one place in the world you would like to visit. You ready for this? All right, 1, 2, 3, go. Okay, so I heard a bunch of different places. I couldn't really understand most of what you said, so I'm just going to tell you my top 5. Top 5 places in the world, okay? Number 1, of course, Colorado Springs, because I love you. In fact, when we first moved here, I began asking God if He would help me fall in love with Colorado Springs, and He's been doing that every single day for our family. I'm super excited about that. Number 2, I was born in the city of Adelaide, but I moved to Sydney in Australia, in New South Wales. I moved there when I was about 5 years old, so I really was raised in Sydney, one of my favorite places to go in the world, and just a gorgeous, beautiful harbor. If you never have experienced Sydney Harbor, you got to pay that ridiculous price tag and get a flight down to Sydney and check out Sydney Harbor. Right after high school, I got to live in the Czech Republic for about 24 months, about 18 months to 2 years, and lived in the city of Prague and absolutely loved that city. It's a special city in Europe that was never touched by any of the world wars. Both of the world wars, the tanks came into that city. They never fired a shot. The Nazis took over the city, World War II, never fired a shot. And so the old city of Prague is still in its original state. Absolutely spectacular city. I love, love, love that city. Number 4, New York City. It's actually my wife's favorite city in the world. So we try to get there at least once or twice a year. We love going to New York City. Just so many fun places to go there. A lot of museums, great food, just a bunch of really fun things to do in New York City. And then number 5 is Jerusalem. I've never been to Jerusalem. It's on my bucket list. I so badly one day want to get to Jerusalem because every single person I've talked to that's gone to Jerusalem says, when you go to the Holy Land, it literally makes the Bible come to life. And so I really, really want to get there one day. And so those are my top 5 cities. But I want to ask you this question this morning. We've been asking this question throughout the series. What if one of these places, or what if the place that you yelled out, what if it disappeared, completely disappeared? Would anybody even notice it? And I'm sure you're sitting there going, well, I would at least notice it because I'm the one who yelled it out. What if one of those places disappeared? Would anybody even notice it? But I think there's a more important question that we've been asking this entire series that really helps guide and direct what we're talking about this morning. And that's this question. What if Red Rock Church disappeared? Would anybody even notice that the church no longer existed? Would anybody in your neighborhood notice? Would anybody in our community notice? Would anybody in our city even notice if Red Rock Church disappeared? And so as we started this series, we answered that question by taking a look at what Jesus taught his disciples right before he was about to leave this earth. After he was crucified and he was buried and he rose again from the dead, he spent a little bit of time with his disciples, about 40 days. And during that time, he spoke some really powerful truths to his disciples. And we took a look at one key verse, Acts chapter 1, verse 8. And here's what Jesus said to his disciples. But you will receive power, talking about the Holy Spirit, when the Holy Spirit comes on you, and you'll be my witnesses in Jerusalem and in all Judea and Samaria and to the ends of the earth. And we've simply said there are 3 key things that we learned from this verse that help us answer the question, what if Red Rock Church disappeared? Would anybody even notice? And here are the 3 key things that we've learned. Number 1, God gave his followers, Jesus gave his followers, a special power. Not a mystical, mysterious power, but a power that allowed his followers to do things that don't come naturally to them through the person of the Holy Spirit. And so Jesus has given us this power as followers of Jesus Christ to be able to do things that don't come naturally, like even be awake and available to your neighbors on Halloween when you just want to turn your lights off and make sure that the house is completely dark so people will pass by. Maybe it doesn't come naturally to love your neighbors, but God has given us this incredible supernatural power through the Holy Spirit that enables us to do things that don't come naturally. The second thing we saw is that Jesus gave his followers a single purpose, to be a witness. And we said that it's really difficult to be a witness of something when you weren't there to actually see what happened. And Jesus said this to his followers, the one thing that will allow you to be my witness, the one thing, if you get this right, that will allow you to be my witness of all the things that have taken place is simply this. By the way you love one another, by the way you love people, it'll be obvious to everybody that you're a follower of Jesus Christ. So even though we weren't there to see it, Jesus gave us a way for us to be a witness simply by loving those that he places around us. Jesus then outlined for his disciples, his followers, a plan that he wanted them to follow. He said, I want you to start in Jerusalem. And we said this, that Jesus isn't asking everyone to pack their bags and move to Jerusalem because that's where we need to start. Jesus is simply saying, start exactly where I placed you. All of his followers at that time were living in Jerusalem. And Jesus would say to us here today, if he were here this morning, I want you to begin right where you are. And we boiled it down to one simple little phrase. We simply said this, you just got to begin to love where you live. Begin to love right where you live. You have an incredible opportunity to do that this weekend, to love where you live. Then the plan goes on, and Jesus says, I want you then to move out from Jerusalem and move into Judea, into Samaria. Those were parts of the country that were right outside of Jerusalem, regions of the world that were just outside of Jerusalem. And so last week, we said, what would it look like if we moved right outside of where we live, right outside of our neighborhoods, and began to love where God has placed us and the regions around us? And we said that one of the things that was so strategic throughout the book of Acts, as we see the gospel take off throughout the entire book of Acts, we see that cities were incredibly strategic throughout that time. And so we believe as a church that God has placed us to be in this city and to be for this city. Last week, it was amazing. You guys are incredibly generous. We presented last week 3 organizations that are helping us to do something that's really, really important. And here's the truth that we talked about. We want to make sure that the least important in our city become the most important in our church. And so last week we had 3 organizations that came that are doing this in our city. You guys poured out your generosity, went above and beyond what we expected. We exceeded the goal that we have set for our church. And we still have an opportunity even today if you'd like to participate in helping some of these organizations. We've exceeded our goal, but here's what I know to be true. I've met with these organizations, and there are still more people in our city that need our help. And so today, right after the services, if you weren't able to give last week to one of those organizations, we want to make that available to you today as well. But here's what I want to invite you to do. I want to invite you to go and visit this website, COSiloveyou.com. And here's the reason why. You can find out all about these different organizations that we're partnering with, that we've already partnered with, that we're going to introduce you to today. You can get involved in volunteering with them. You can get involved in helping to give and fund the things that they're doing. But here's what we'd like to do. Next weekend, on November 1st, we're going to celebrate all that God has done through this 'Cause I Love You campaign. And so we're going to announce to you the amounts of money that we were able to raise and give away to places like Springs Rescue Mission, and the amount of money that we were able to raise and help James Monroe Elementary School through Care and Share and providing food in backpacks for children that are in need. And we're going to tell you how many people have decided to volunteer and get involved in helping to mentor families out of homelessness and get into homes, and volunteer at places like Care and Share and Hope and Home. But we can only celebrate that if you take the time to go to COSiloveyou.com and tell us what you've been participating in or what you plan to participate in. Here's something that I know that is true about you because it's true about me. Here's the reality. Most of us, when we're invited to do something like that, most of us probably will leave today and we'll forget about it. And we won't take the time to go to COSiloveyou.com and we'll forget to do it. So here's what I'd like to do. All of us do really well with incentives, okay? And so I want to incentivize you today to go to COSiloveyou.com and share with us the things that you've been doing so that we can celebrate it, not by sharing names next week, but by just sharing all that God has done through this 'Cause I Love You campaign. So for every single time you go to COSiloveyou.com and you register some initiative that you've been involved in, like signing up to do some volunteering or giving online or whatever it is, we would like to give you a 10% discount to the 'Cause I Love You store. And so if you go online and you do that, then we'll tally that up and we'll make sure that it's available to you at the store, and we'll be able to give you that discount to help incentivize you, because I know that you're probably like me. You're going to walk out of here and forget about it. But if you could get a discounted t-shirt, you're probably going to go and do it. So I want to invite you to do that. Well, this morning, we're going to wrap things up as we look at this plan that Jesus outlined. And I want to take a look at that last part of the plan that Jesus talked about to his disciples. Jesus said, I want you to start in Jerusalem, move out to Judea and Samaria, and then tackle, and he dropped a bombshell on his followers. I want you to tackle the ends of the earth. Now, you got to picture this for a second. Stay with me and picture this for a second. Jesus is talking to his followers at this time. He's probably seated on some hillside somewhere in some village, and he's talking to his followers. And he's not talking to hundreds of people. He's not talking to thousands of people. He's probably talking to dozens, maybe 20 or so people. And he says to them, here's the plan. Start in Jerusalem, make your way to Judea and Samaria, and then I want you to take this to the ends of the earth. I don't know about you, but if I were there that day, I'd probably been one of those guys that looked around and been like, hey, who's taking this to the ends of the earth? there's like 20 of us standing here. How in the world are we going to fulfill this plan that you're giving us, Jesus, with the few people that are standing around us today? That's an impossible, impossible task. And sometimes, I think even today, many times we look at this plan, we look at this task that Jesus gives us, and we look around at how many people are in this room or how many people are followers of Jesus Christ, and we look at the amount of need in our city, we look at the amount of need in our world, and quite frankly, I get really overwhelmed by the incredible amount of need and the lack of resources that it takes to meet those needs. And so sometimes we look at all of the things that we're being asked to do, and maybe even you've been coming to the "Cause I Love You" series, and you're like, man, week 1, you asked us to get involved with our neighborhoods, and then last week, now we're giving to this organization. You want us to volunteer at this organization, and today you're going to lump a bunch more on us. Man, Jason, it just seems overwhelming, the incredible need that we have in our world, and how is it even possible that we're going to be able to fulfill the plan that God has given us? I want to share with you some words of encouragement this morning that the Apostle Paul, who wrote most of the New Testament, wrote in a letter to a group of Christians living in a city called Galatia, who were kind of overwhelmed, and they were a little bit weary, and they were a little bit burdened by all the incredible needs that were going on around them. Listen to what the Apostle Paul has to say in Galatians. He says this, "Let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time," and this is so key, proper time, "for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we don't give up." Paul is essentially saying to them, I know that times are tough. I know that the need seems overwhelming, but I want you not to get tired. Don't grow weary in doing good. Because at the right time, God's timing, and I've seen this and you've probably seen this in your own life, at the right time, in God's time, things will take place, the need will be met at the proper time if we continue and don't give up. And then Paul goes on to say something after this thought. He says, because of that thought, therefore, as we have opportunity, that word opportunity that Paul uses, if you actually look at the original language that this was written in the language of Greek, Paul uses a word that could be translated the word time, or it could be translated into the word resources, or it could be translated into the word finances. But basically what Paul is saying, as you have opportunity, not your neighbor, not the person sitting next to you in church this morning, but as you have opportunity, as you have time, as you have resources, as you have finances, as you have time to volunteer, not somebody else, but you, when you have the opportunity, here's what I want you to do. Let us do good to all people, especially to those who belong to the family of believers. Not just for those that are followers of Jesus Christ. I want you to do good for all people. Take the opportunity that God has given you. Take the time, the resources, the money, whatever it is that God has put into your hands, and I want you to do good with all of that. Paul, earlier on in this chapter, in verse 2, he explains how you go about doing that. He says this, carry each other's burdens, and in this way you will fulfill the law of Christ. As you look around and you see the burdens that people are carrying, whether it's in your neighborhood, in our city, maybe around the world, he simply says this, when you see a burden that somebody's carrying, and it's with the opportunity, the time, the resources, the money that God has given you, come alongside them and help carry that burden. But here's the problem. There's a question that comes to my mind all the time. As I look at all the needs of our city, as I look at all the needs of our world, I get overwhelmed, and I ask this question, and it's not even close to grammatically correct, all right? So let's read this together. This is what I ask. What do you do when you can't do what you want to for everyone you want to? I didn't know how to make it grammatically correct, so I just put a bunch of hyphens in there and hoped that that would work. What do you do when you can't do everything you want to do for everybody that you want to do with that? A couple of years ago, I was listening to one of our teaching pastors, Andy Stanley, and he shared a simple truth that I have never forgotten. It's a simple truth that when this question of what do you do when you can't do what you want to for everyone you want to, when that question comes into my mind, this simple truth comes up time and time again that I heard several years ago. This is what Andy said. Andy said simply this, do for one what you wish you could do for everyone. Don't throw in the towel and say, well, I can't solve all of the world hunger problems, or I can't solve all of the issues of clean water around the world, so because I can't do that, I'm going to throw in the towel. And he simply says this: do for one what you wish you could do for every single person in the world. Just start with one. And so as I think about that truth, a couple of things come to mind. Number one, that's a great place to start. But number two, it kind of flies in the face of a truth that you probably heard growing up, maybe even a thing that you heard growing up and you've actually started to use it now as you deal with your kids. But maybe you're like me, and as a kid, you used to ask your parents or you'd ask a teacher at school, hey, can I go and do this? And their response was simply this, and you probably heard this before: if I let you do it, then I have to let everybody do it. And what you thought back then is still true today. No, you don't. You say to your parents, hey, I really want to go do this. And they're like, well, if I let you do it, then I got to let all of the kids do it. And you're like, no, you don't. I won't tell them if you don't tell them. We'll keep it to ourselves. Because the reality is, if you do for one, you don't have to do it for everyone. And it's a great place to start. This morning, I want to introduce you guys to some organizations that are helping people do for one what they wish they could do for everyone all across the world. There's some great organizations that help partner with us, and they're going to do it today, to help us as individuals, as we feel overwhelmed by the incredible needs of our world. The fact that we can't solve all these problems, these organizations come alongside us and they help us to do for one what we wish we could do for everyone. One of those organizations is an organization that's very dear to my heart. One of my closest friends growing up in Australia works for an organization called Samaritan's Purse. And every year, we see these red and green shoe boxes. You saw them out in the lobby today. Every year, they help people all across the world do for one what they wish they could do for everyone. Take a look at this video from Samaritan's Purse this morning.
There are children's lives around the world right now that are linked to our story and that we're linked to their story through what Samaritan's Purse and Operation Christmas Child makes a reality.
The church can sometimes think that it's all about what I'm doing inside my walls. And so part of what this allows us to do is connect in the larger church. We are opening doors for other churches and other parts of the world to do ministry in their local community.
The shoebox opens a door.
It's more than a box. It's church planting. It's community transformation.
Beyond the shoeboxes, the greatest journey disciples them and nurtures them.
One church can only do so much, but the church, sharing a common vision, allow for us to connect across the nations to reach people that no one church could ever reach by themselves.
There's a real story on the other end of that box. And so why wouldn't you want to be a part of a story like this?
Operation Christmas Child every year does some incredible things around the world. One of my closest friends, his name's Rodney, he works for Samaritan's Purse. He has the privilege of going and delivering these shoe boxes all across the world to children and taking teams of people to go do it. And every single time I talk to Rodney, he reminds me that it is way more than a shoebox. He talks about all the projects that are going on beyond the box. Orphanages that are being established, hospitals that are being established, schools that are being established. And these shoeboxes, honestly, for many times in many countries, these are just an open door for the organization to be able to come in and begin establishing more and more ministry. And so I want to ask you to do two things today. Every single person in the congregation this morning, I want to ask you to do two things. If every adult that were here this morning, this Sunday morning, if every single adult that were here this morning took one shoebox, that means 2 per couple. If every single adult took one shoebox each, every single shoebox that is in the building today would be taken care of. And so it's just simply one shoebox for every single person in the room. And then what I want to invite you to do is to bring it back to church with you on November 1st, that's next Sunday, so that we can get these shoe boxes to Samaritan's Purse so that they can get them out to those children that are in need and open doors of opportunity all across the world. Because we want to begin to do for one what we wish we could do for everyone. We may not be able to solve all the problems of the world, but we can at least partner with an organization that is helping us to do for one what we wish we could do for everyone. We have another great organization I want to introduce you to this morning called World Vision. World Vision do so many different things. They're involved in just probably dozens, maybe even 100 different initiatives around the world solving all sorts of problems. But the one thing that we want to introduce you to this morning is the issue of clean water and sanitation. And this is something that many people that attend Red Rock on a regular basis are already involved with. And so we just want to cast the vision broader so that more people can understand how they can get involved. So take a look at this short video from World Vision.
Ile kiu betu nama ya kulina roti ko korbicha pait sabe nyon nebo kongo era kolonji mungu kongoi kamaje ne ka kola ses kunyo ne kolona. I have 3 children. What working? Playful. Mom. Like when kararan tung da tap nakara yung lonji kosto pasit. Felix farjo. To chome itu kan jepali tek keji sor sana napenda sana chame jo Anthony Jafongor so kabisa akwenda sawa ko kanya tap to nai kiboisien 6 hours skenyor dejo 3 going and 3 coming matugu mi kaya ka kol to sakale ko ticha kula magini ka takami an betu na ko kol to gutyo ngala chabo kiak saro ke nyoro ko ke toro tembe jo momi se ji ko mi se sabara ka ngam betu na ye ka tobon ko masak ke no ko tama bian ko chit masak ke ko ipen mai se nyu kana lo sabe de ba mai se na karam as ke le ka tan ga man betu se jo am sabe nyane na ko to nyala ko ni mi tamo ma ga na menanga asagan jer kan embatai kanyar ko tanin ke yogi tu kapsana ke ngwane tiona ko se to taren ta ko lagi ni mo se spesial ke sapjin am goron nda ulo ke kenya wal bishon goron parta pai bi ke ko kunet ke le kan me chesa ya kulena ko pai pai sabe jan ko ngot ma yene ke gol ni ne ko kapasa ako lang yung munggoy amo ki kasasay yung betu na ko nang becha mi to kombaga bona kana igalak sap yung goro na kulo logo kyoche ka chena logo jote je kulo che ko nyora bia babe nyor mo ne ko nyora ngotani nyor ko chami misam kulo kulla ke mane ne bakongot amo yetse buy go jo logo jo jai ko ep ti bara jo suswa ako go be jo ta na mama bataya kunyo 6 kilomita singarang nebo kongot cha itu msai sta koronyo go kasi nyonta ka mato go ureni lia mara some the time ko nget ko mara ning ka kai ndogo amma to ko bon go yakel ko le kita pai korol maroban ko korum jikot ko nyong ko terje ko ko tungwe ko ko korum je ko nyong ko terje ya rope je bo hol bisana ko lenje nang pai tabe nyon ko lenje ko koi ko beru ro ko ba kanyi sija amu ka ko wer tawa ni manga to la ko wenda to janda yana na
Hey, would you welcome Heather to the stage this morning? Heather is a part of our church and extraordinary volunteer at our church, but also has helped out with Team World Vision for a number of years now. And so I just want to ask you a couple of questions, Heather, this morning about Team World Vision, how you guys help to tackle this water issue. Maybe tell us a little bit more about what the issue looks like for a lot of children in Africa and other parts of the world and so on, and then maybe what this goes towards, what we can help fund.
Yeah, absolutely. And Sylvia's story gets me every time. But what's incredible is if you think about the kids in this country, 50% of kids don't live to the age of 5, and if they do, and it's because of the lack of access to clean water and sanitation. If they do live to 5, this is the typical age when they start fetching water from their families, for their families, and they fetch it from swamps and dirty riverbeds. So it's not even water it's quite frankly drinkable.
Yeah.
And this route, this traditional route, is the #1 route of human trafficking in the world, which is a whole nother topic. But we run because these kids have to run back and forth 6 miles a day to fetch this water.
Yeah.
So we want to carry the burden so that they don't have to. And what's awesome, in Team World Vision Colorado over the last 3 years has raised over $270,000,
Wow.
which equates to 5,400 lives, because just $50 changes a life of an individual forever.
Yeah, so providing clean water to an individual for their entire life only takes $50, and you guys run in a race every year, and you raise money for that. So if I'm not a runner, and it's obvious that I'm not a runner, okay, I jokingly say if I was half the man that I am, I still probably couldn't do half a marathon, but that's okay. Here's what I'd like to ask you, though. If I'm not a runner, but I'd like to get involved, what are some things that I can do to get involved with? And can I even make it through the whole race if I did want to run?
Absolutely. We believe you are a runner,
Okay.
no matter what.
Somewhere deep inside.
I'm not a runner, but I've run many half marathons, and I changed from running to the medals for myself to running for these kids.
Yeah.
And what's cool is that Team World Vision has a training program that will take you from never running before to doing a half marathon and marathon. And these kids right here, we've got kids, the little tsunamis that ran this year, they've never run distance in their young lives. And some of these faces you'll recognize too, but these little tsunamis ran a half marathon this year with the help of Team World Vision's training program. And quite frankly, they kicked the butts of the adults as well. So we believe that anybody can run a half marathon. You can run it, you can walk it. But we're out there carrying the burden of these kids so that they don't have to. So every year we partner with the American Discovery Trail Marathon here on Labor Day. So it's a local race to support our local community, but also these kids. And for more information, we'll be out here at the end of the service talking about how you can commit, sign up to get more information, because it really comes down to informing you on how to train, but also to fundraise, because that's what we do.
Yeah, very cool. So we want to thank Heather for being with us this morning. Give her a big round of applause. Heather, thank you so much. A couple of things that I want to encourage you to do. Number one, you can sign up to be a runner. You can do that out in the lobby today, or you can go to COSiloveyou.com and you can sign up. Even if you're just remotely interested, which is the category that I'm putting myself in this year, okay? I'm in the remotely interested, and it's very remote right now. But what you'd be doing is signing up so that in the spring, when they start doing interest group meetings and so on, you can participate in that and find out more about it and how to get involved in the training program. So sign up with me in the remotely interested group. You can do that right after the service. And you can also help support a runner by raising funds towards their race, and also by on race day being there for them, or while they're training and so on, you can support a runner as well. Well, I want to introduce you to one more organization that is a local organization right here in Colorado Springs. Probably not new to many of you. Many of you are probably very familiar with Compassion and the work that they do around the world. But take a look at this short video from Compassion this morning.
My sponsor had a great impact on me, on my development, because every time I go to school, every time I do something, I always think of them and I always make them proud. Yes, I always want to make my parents proud too, but there's another set of parents that I consider that I don't want to disappoint them.
I see my sponsors, Betty and Boyd, as my family, because that's how they treated me. They treated me as one of their sons.
The first person that helped me believe that I could be a leader was my sponsor, who wrote me that letter and told me that they believed in me. And I thought to myself, if they believed in me and I was going to become somebody, it's true. I can actually become that somebody.
And they always encouraged me just to be a good student, a good daughter, and just to keep learning as much as I could, because even though in my thoughts that maybe I will not be able to do much because I didn't have the resources, but they always put those words in my heart that I will have just to trust in God, that He will open doors for me.
I'm what I am today because of a stranger willing to invest in my life and show me the love of Christ and pray for me and encourage me each step of the way.
Hey, would you do me a favor and welcome Carmen Hoffmeyer to the stage this morning? Carmen is a huge volunteer here at Red Rock Church. She does so many things around the church. So grateful for her. In fact, Carmen was one of the first voices that I ever got to talk to before I came on staff here at Red Rock. And so we're super grateful for all that you do at Red Rock, but also what you do at Compassion. Maybe share with people this morning what the $38 a month, many of us have been to a concert, we've heard about sponsoring a child before. What does the $38 a month go towards when you sponsor a child?
Sure. One of the distinctives for Compassion is that we work through local, church-based child development centers. So when a child is part of our programs, they will be given the opportunity to develop in several different areas, be that physical, emotional, spiritual, mental, and the way that the money gets spent is dependent on what's specifically needed in that country. So each country is slightly customized based on what the biggest need is for that country, but they fall into several main categories, one being educational. For some kids, public school is free in their country, but you can only attend it if you already have your uniform. And maybe your parents can't afford your uniforms, so one aspect might be paying for those uniforms. Another category is within the health category, and all of our children are learning about good hygiene and how they can keep themselves healthy through different practices within good hygiene. A third category would be the physical. So for a lot of our kids, there's an opportunity to exercise or participate in sports to kind of help them develop their gross and fine motor skills. Fourth one would be an opportunity for them to grow in their confidence and also in their social skills. So each of our centers has Christian adults volunteering to help with the kids, a lot like our kids areas here at our church. And those adults are showing those kids that they are loved and that they have a purpose and that God loves them. So that helps build their confidence and encourages them. And then another distinctive about Compassion is our focus on Jesus. And so we also are always giving the child an opportunity to hear the gospel and to learn who Jesus is and that he has a purpose for their life and that he loves them.
Yeah, very cool. So outside in the lobby today, Compassion has a table set up with a number of children on the table. I'm going to be honest with you guys. I oftentimes, when I go to those concerts and Compassion gets up, I have avoided the table. I'm being honest and transparent. I couldn't avoid the table this morning because I'm asking you to do something, and I've said this many times. I will never ask you to do something that I'm not willing to do myself. And so Carmen this week actually called me and said, hey, you'll never believe it, but we got our packets ready for Sunday, and in our group of packets are a set of twin girls. And so Kristen and I are going to be sponsoring these two girls. They're absolutely gorgeous little girls. They were born in 2012. Catherine and Prosy are their names. And so I want to encourage you. You can't solve it for everybody, but you can do for one what you wish you could do for every single one of them. And so I want to encourage you to go out to the table. Anything else they need to do to sponsor a child today, Carmen?
Nope, you can come to the table, pick one up. It's very easy to fill out the form on the back, which Jason will come do after he's done with service. And we will then take that back to Compassion. Compassion will take care of all the rest for you, and you can start writing letters to your child right away. Another distinctive about Compassion is that it's one child to one sponsor. So The child that you are picking up off that table today, you are the one person that's sponsoring them. You're the one person outside of their own country who's going to be praying for them, who's going to be encouraging them through your letters, and hopefully maybe someday getting a chance to visit them.
Yeah, very cool. Hey, would you thank Carmen for being with us today? Carmen, thanks for being with us. As we wrap up our time this morning, I want to just let you know, you can probably see a little bit of a theme happening today. We have decided as a church, rather than trying to tackle these issues all over the place, all across the world, we want to go deep in one part of the world. And so we've picked Central Africa, specifically the country of Uganda. And the reason we want to do that is because we want to go deep with this country rather than trying to go wide and solve all the issues of the world. The other thing we want to do is we want to go long term rather than short term. And so over the next few months, you're going to hear about opportunities, not just to sponsor a child, but to be able to even go and visit a child. And then the last thing we want to do as a church is we want to go with time, not just money. It's really easy for us, honestly, as Americans. We live in one of the most wealthy countries in the world. It's easy for us to write a check instead of write a letter to a sponsored child. It's easy for us to write a check than train for a half marathon and run in a race that could raise so much more money for villages in Africa that need water. And so I want to encourage you to do for one what you wish you could do for every single one. That's how we can do this plan that Jesus outlined for his disciples. And one of my dreams is this. I hope that one day I'm walking down the streets of Kampala in Uganda, and I'm hoping that one day I get to see somebody wearing a t-shirt, like this one maybe, that says, "'Cause I love you" on it. And if I walked up to them and I said, "Hey, if Red Rock Church disappeared, would anybody notice it?" And they'd look back in my eyes and they'd say, "Absolutely, I would. Because somebody did for me what they wish they could do for everyone." And I want to challenge you to do that today. Let me pray for you this morning. Father, thank you so much for what you're doing in our church through this incredible generosity that we've talked about through "'Cause I Love You." And God, I pray that you would help us not to become overwhelmed by the incredible need, but help us to start by just doing for one what we wish we could do for everyone. And we pray this in your Son's precious name, in the name of Jesus. Amen. Hey, make sure that you mark your calendar to be with us next Sunday, because we're going to celebrate all that God has done through "'Cause I Love You. And make sure that you go online to COSiloveyou.com so that you can register all the things that you've been doing throughout the series. We'll celebrate that with you next week. Have a great week.